The Bay of Pigs was a battle between Cuban exiles trained by the United States Central Intelligence Agency and the Cuban dictator Fidel Castro in April 1961. The United States recruited approximately 1,400 Cuban exiles to make a surprise attack at the Bahía de los Cochinos, or the Bay of Pigs, in the south-central coast of Cuba. The ultimate goal was to overthrow Castro's dictatorship. The invasion of the Bay of Pigs was designed with the intention of evoking an uprising of military support from Cuban locals against the dictator. That support from within Cuba never fulfilled. The minimal number of soldiers was overtaken, and with it, Cuba gained not only a military victory, but also a forever symbol of Cuban opposition against American aggression. Cuba and the United States were not at war, but it was 1961 and in the midst of the Cold War when international tensions were high due to communism. Fidel Castro had recently overthrown the American-backed Fulgencio Batista. Castro's regime was looking communist in nature with tight links with Nikita Khrushchev from the Soviet Union. President John F. Kennedy gave the final authorization to invade the Bay of Pigs. However, the planning started in 1960 by the CIA under the direction of President Dwight D. Eisenhower. The plan was in its final stages with the invasion force trained and equipped waiting in their training ground of Guatemala for the go-ahead from the U.S. President. The 1,400 armed foreigners made the Guatemalan president apprehensive. Thus, he mandated the United States to ensure the Cuban exiles exit Guatemala by the end of April 1961. On top of that, the CIA had word that the Soviets were preparing special fighter planes to send Cuba, with trained pilots to fly them. They were estimated to arrive in the weeks to come. Despite this intense pressure, Kennedy did not have a 100% backing from the U.S. government. Though the invasion was supposed to be secret, the Cubans had contacted the United Nations over 6 months prior with knowledge of future military clash through trained mercenaries. Kennedy was willing to pursue the plan as designed under one stipulation. The United States will under no circumstances send in reinforcements. This fight was supposed to appear to be between Cubans. Senator J. William Fulbright warned Kennedy that the invasion was hypocritical, comparable to what the U.S. accused the Soviets. Fulbright was alone in his disapproval, with powerful voices on the approval, such as former Vice President Nixon, John's brother, Robert F. Kennedy, and the Secretary of Defense, Robert S. McNamara. With the agreement, there would be no ties to the U.S. government. Kennedy authorized the attack. On April 12, Kennedy announced in press conference that the U.S. would absolutely not intervene in Cuban affairs. 5 days later, the exiles invaded Cuba. The invasion was underway on April 16. Shortly after midnight, it did not go as planned. Coral reefs barricaded where the boats were to approach the island, stranding 2 of the 6 boats 80 miles offshore. The attack still appeared strong, yet momentum soon waned as the anticipated support from the locals was in existence. To the surprise of the CIA, the locals were in firm support of Castro and his purported revolution. Despite the odds against them, the exiles followed through with the invasion because they had been reassured by the CIA that the U.S. military would have a ship just off the island to send in help if need be. Then reality set in when on April 17th, the United States announced they would only send in air support if U.S. planes could launch from within Cuba. The lack of air support proved fatal for the mission. 2 days later, after more than 200 Cuban exiles were dead, the invasion was seized, and the rest of the 1,200 exiles were taken as prisoners of war. Under a mass military trial, almost all of the exiles were found guilty and sentenced to 30 years incarceration. Initially, the government of the United States denied any involvement in the episode. The cover-up was sloppy, and with the help of the press, the truth was inevitable, revealed. Within 3 months, President Kennedy announced the U.S. involvement in the invasion of Bay of Pigs and took total blame for the failure. The 3 men responsible for planning the attack were revealed of their government duties. For 20 months, the United States fought for the independence of the jailed exiles. Cuba agreed to let them free for $53 million, with worth of food and medicine. The failed military attempt created an environment of military aggression from the U.S. to Cuba. Kennedy did not lose nor hide his desire to overthrow Castro, and Castro's insecurity materialized in arming Cuba with Soviet missiles. The Bay of Pigs invasion was a loss and therefore a blow to the pride of the United States. Yet it prepared the Kennedy administration to successfully combat the Soviet threat to the United States and dismantle the Cuban Missile Crisis.